correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Welcome to Me and Steve Talk RPGs, a podcast where me and my friend Steve try and help you get the most out of your role-playing game experience. Hey folks, welcome back to Me and Steve Talk RPGs. I'm going solo again. Well, only one Steve at the moment. We'll get into some fun stuff here in a minute, but before we get into the topic for this week, I wanted to let you know about another podcast here on the D20 Radio Network, and this week we're going to shout out Eberron Renewed, which is an actual play podcast, which, as you might guess from the title, specializes in the Eberron setting. Now, I'll be completely honest and upfront, I haven't gotten around to listening to them for a while. I did listen to their entire first campaign, which was done using 5th edition D&D rules. I listened to a bunch of their second campaign, which used an adaptation of Genesis to play Eberron. And I know they are currently in their third campaign, which I believe, at least at one point, they were intending to use a custom system for. So you and I and anyone who likes Eberron should go check out the Eberron Renewed podcast because, well, it's a very good show. And they're big fans of Eberron, and Eberron is cool. And I've met Eric and Philip and Jeff, at least from the cast, at GamerNationCon before. They're all really cool people. So, yeah, go check that out. And, of course, there's also a bunch of other podcasts on the network. So listen to them, listen to us, check stuff out, enjoy stuff. So with all that, and I mentioned GamerNationCon. So one of the people that I got to meet this year at GamerNationCon, or actually, well, technically 3 people, and I met them before GamerNationCon technically, because we got a ride together from the hotel to this convention site, and then I got breakfast and then hung out with them for a few minutes in the donut shop. And that was the folks from the Tabletop Empire YouTube channel. Specifically, in my case, it was Joe, who you heard a few episodes back when we did a kind of GNC recap episode. But I also met one of the other cast members from the Dark Underworld series, Noah, and of course, Nate, the GM. And this week, Nate has been kind enough to join me to talk about Tabletop Empire, why Star Wars is the greatest single role-playing setting in the world, and probably some other things that we'll get to. So, hello, Nate.
Hello there. How's it going?
Not bad. How are you?
Doing good. Happy to be here.
Well, glad to have you. So, okay, yes, I said Star Wars is the single greatest setting. Yes, no, right? Like, I'm not going to say it's for everything, but I've thought a lot about this. And the thing is there is so much you can do in the Star Wars universe, so many different types of stories you can tell.
Yeah, with different themes, different feel, like different what's the word? It's like the difference between like Clone Wars and Andor and everything in between. Like you really can have any kind of story in Star Wars.
You can. And now I think there are certain, say, tones or specific things that particularly the current edition may not handle as well as other systems, but that would be shoehorning that genre into Star Wars as opposed to, like, to play Star Wars-y things. I think this system is wonderful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, where would you like to start? I know you run a at least reasonably successful YouTube channel called Tabletop Empire.
Yeah. So, I'm the creator, founder, owner of Tabletop Empire. I've been around for about 2.5 years. Started the YouTube channel in August of 2022. And the original plan, when I was planning the channel in March of that year, was to launch with both like educational content with a whole series on like how to play the game, as well as an actual play. And I started planning this before we moved to Florida. And then we moved to Florida and didn't have internet really for like our internet was a MiFi box that got like 1.5 megabytes down and like 0.1 upload speed.
Mm-hmm.
So before we moved, I tried to get an actual play together. So I texted friends, Noah, Joe, Lacey, who's currently a thing, and another friend of ours named Austin. and we were all going to do the actual play. But then after I moved, I couldn't have a stable, even a video call. So
Jeez.
it was like, okay, well, I guess the actual play is going on the back burner for a little bit, and kind of did a lot of the educational content for 2 years on like how to play the game, how to be like a better GM for the game, that kind of stuff. And then finally got good enough internet to do it. So started planning. And then this past January, we started. I reached back out to the four and was like, hey, you guys still interested in being players in an actual play? And three of the four were still available. And so then found Jeff from RPG Sessions who was interested in being the fourth. So we chatted for a little bit and he seemed like a good fit. So we added him in. And yeah, people seem to be really enjoying it, which is nice.
Yeah, well, I can say this before GamerNationCon, which was what now, a month and a half ago, basically. Am I?
Yeah, almost 2 months ago now.
Well, yeah, getting close. I I want to say I had heard of your channel, but I had never, like gone and really checked it out. Between then and I don't know when 2 3 weeks ago when I talked with Joe, basically I got back from GamerNationCon and went, I need to check this out, and I devoured the first segments of Dark Underworld that you had up there. Now, I know you just released one. Was it yesterday? As we're
It's every
recording.
Tuesday night.
Okay.
Well, I guess every Tuesday night we're not on a break.
Okay, so but anyway, you just, as we're speaking, came back from a break this week. I have not gotten that episode checked out yet, but I really, really enjoyed that first. I guess that was all really one arc. It was sort of two, but kind of one.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's weird. So we started the campaign, and I shot this idea out to the players of like, hey, how would you feel about playing a game where it's post Return of the Jedi, like right after Return of the Jedi, the Empire's falling, and it's set on like the underworld of Coruscant, and with like the Empire disappearing, like they never had that big of a hold on the underworld of Coruscant, but like with them disappearing, it's like, oh, now there's really opportunity here for the crime
Mhm.
syndicates to kind of take over. And so I was like, well, what if the players like were trying to be one of the powers to take over the criminal underworld? And so that's kind of was the main plot idea. And Act One really, they kind of ended up pursuing some other side plots that kind of helps. That's going to help them like further the main plot. Um, so Act One was kind of like getting the characters used to each other. Uh, like everybody doesn't as apprehensive of each other at first, so slowly kind of becoming more of an actual team. And there's, as with anything, there's a couple like steps backwards with like trusting each other and stuff that have been kind of fun moments, and more of those in Act Two at the beginning. But other fun little, like there was an Indiana Jones style like treasure mystery adventure that
Mhm.
was pretty fun, and that whole thing actually spawned from, it was either Joe or Noah's backstory. I think it was Noah's backstory.
Okay. Oh, I was
So
going to say, I know, not to spoiler anything for anyone that hasn't checked it out, but I know through that was when he was having the hallucination, correct?
kind of. That's like an early part of his backstory. So towards the end of his backstory was how he and Mott met,
Mhm.
and he pretty much was like, and we take something important from this pirate group. And so then I was like, what? And I mean, my wife had just finished watching Indiana Jones, and so I was like, what if it's like a cool kind of mystery, ancient treasure or power, like legend style of thing that can be kind of like a side adventure for them to pursue.
I think that works well, though, like you said, because I know every time I have put together a new table for a campaign or whatever, there is that growing pain of at least a couple sessions where even if most of the table has played together before, or especially like if these two have played together and these two have played together, you know what I mean? So there's familiarity, but it usually takes a little while for everyone to figure out how this specific table and these characters play together.
Mm.
And I think, in my experience too, playing online as you guys do, that process seems to almost take a little longer.
It
I
does.
don't know if it's just because you can't read body language as well.
Yeah, I mean, it helps in our case that, so like I've known Lacey, Noah, and Joe in person for ranging 7 to 10 years.
Mhm.
And so like for example, like Noah's my best friend, best man at my wedding. We met our freshman year within the first week of our freshman year of college on our dorm mates, and then ended up being roommates. And so we've played a bunch of games together. So we just kind of know how each other works.
Mhm.
Um, Met Lacey and Joe kind of through the same friend group, but they were kind of both on opposite ends of that friend group. Um, and so had a pretty good friendship with Lacey for a little bit, and then Joe, I kind of knew of Joe, but I also knew he was very like a theatrical personality and stuff. So like even when we play games like Avalon or like One Night Ultimate Werewolf or something, like he'd get really into like a character or that kind of thing. So I was like, dude, he'd be so good for an actual play. I need to reach out to him and see if he'd be interested.
I enjoy all the characters, but I really do enjoy Mott, and I like how. And I told him this when I had him on, and I don't remember if this came up while we were recording or we ended up chatting for a while afterwards. Like I really like how that character both like so plays into all the tropes, but yet there's a character there too, and
Yeah.
it's a really neat balance. And I like too, like you said, you're developing, at least through the episodes that I've watched, kind of those relationships between the characters are developing. Like initially
Yeah.
you kind of had, and this is how you set it up to bring it in, probably due to backstories or whatever, you had Joe and Noah's character were kind of a two, and then you had Lacey and Jeff, and they, but now you're kind of getting this weird dynamic building where the dynamics between all the directions are starting to build, and it's really entertaining, and
Yeah.
I like it.
I asked the players, each of them, like, kind of how they wanted to be introduced into the story. Did they want to be like all? They want to already know each other when it starts? Did they want to all not know each other when it starts? And then Noah and Joe were both like, "Yeah, I think it'd be cool to like at least know one person, like for us to be like paired up at the start." And I was like, "Okay, cool." What are the other two? And they're like, "I think it'd be neat, like if we know each other, but we're not like traveling together." And so that's where in episode one, it's like that's okay. They know of each other. They've at least met before. And then what really helps though is that all of the players, like one, it helps in kind of knowing a lot of these people in person beforehand. But even Jeff, it's like all four of us just mesh really, really, really well together as
Mhm.
players. We also spend a lot of time talking before and after, mainly after sessions, like how did it go? How do we feel? Hey, by the way, like I'm not out of character. I'm not mad at you, even if our characters have a disagreement, and everybody's like, yeah, totally, I completely understand. And so we all are. I think we also before actually doing the actual play, we did a little mini like 5 session campaign with us four plus my wife plus another friend of ours, just to kind of get used to playing with each other a bit,
Mhm.
which was helpful. And then we ran Trouble Brewing, just us four, with our characters for this actual play. So that way they could kind of like figure out how their characters are going to role play. And then doing like hard, like, that was a quote unquote like alternate timeline story. So
Mhm.
it's just purely practice for their characters, figure out how they work and how they were going to role play them and mesh together with each other and stuff. So we've done a little bit more like prep beforehand than I maybe would have done if it was a non-broadcasted game. Like I required all of them to write actual backstories, like at least I think I said at least a page and a half. I want at least a page and a half of a backstory just to give me things to go off of for the campaign and whatnot, which normally I don't really require backstories. I typically tell my players like, hey, if you give me a backstory, like I can do really cool things with it. But if you don't, then I don't really stress it either. So
I mean, like, well, yeah, right. Like, you need somewhat of a concept of your past, even if you don't have a written backstory. I think that
right.
that is just, it gives you like rails to kind of guide things, right? But no, and see, this is something too. And like, we do some actual play content, but most of ours, the way we have kind of intentionally gone is more of a, hey, we're going to play a game and record it. And then, yes, I do edit it, but it's more just cutting down silence. Maybe an occasional tangent gets cut out. But our goal in what we present has been more to go, hey, this is what your game could reasonably sound like if you sit down with some friends. And,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that yours doesn't feel that way, because it does have that very accessible kind of feel to it. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't have that super polished, Dimension 20 Critical Role. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I know you and I talked about this some,
Yeah.
conversations while we were at GamerNationCon, that like Critical Role is kind of its own thing, because not only is it at compared to all of us, certainly it's a very high budget production, but also they're all professional actors. you
Yeah.
know, yes, okay, this point it is a job, but these are skills they have spent years honing to earn a living that they're now using to play a fun game for profit.
Yeah.
I think it's a little unfair for most of us to expect that of a group of random people that sit down. And yet, it's also, to me, it's like, hey, look, this is what it legitimately can be.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, I actually had a decent amount of anxiety, like, before starting the actual play, while planning it, because, like, we wanted to do the Critical Role or Dimension 20 of Star Wars RPG, like, or as close as we could possibly do without being voice actors and stuff. But, like, I mean, I'd like to think that I'm a decent GM, but I'm not. I'm definitely not Matt Mercer. And so there was like a decent amount of that imposter syndrome of like the almost the self expectation of like wanting to be as good as Matt Mercer for this actual play. And then it took me a good while of probably like a few weeks before I finally started to like settle in of like, okay, you know what, it's okay. Like and a lot of audience people that like I'd kind of chatted to about it over like a live stream and stuff. They're like, yeah, you don't need to be Matt Mercer to run a good actual play or to be entertaining or
No, I mean,
so.
it's be yourself. And like, I think I told you about this way back when, but I'll share it for the audience, even though I've mentioned it in previous episodes. Seth Skorkowski did a video about the Matt Mercer effect, that comparison,
I think I've
whatever.
seen it. Yeah.
And he, and I think it's called something weird. Yeah, I don't remember what, but he was telling the story of this, and I'm gonna make up the guy's name, Brian, right? And so this one player he had was in another game with this DM Brian, and all this player did was talk about how great of a GM Brian was at, and whatever. And so Seth said, he played with him for couple years, whatever. Then just randomly at some party or something, he ends up meeting Brian. And Brian goes, "Oh, you're Seth. I've heard so much about how you're," and come to find out what it was as they talked, this player would talk up elements of Brian's game to Seth, but then talk up different elements of Seth's game to Brian. And what they realized is both of them were just really good at different things. And
Yeah.
that's what that player was fixating on. And so,
Yep.
like, it's not, we're humans, right? We're not going to be good at everything. Just be yourself. And I think that genuineness resonates with people.
Yeah.
And that goes for just playing, not even for actual play or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, I never really had any sort of, like, expectation on myself to GM in a certain way or to be, like, good in a Matt Mercer kind of way, like, in a private at-home setting, but there's almost this, with it being something broadcasted and putting it out in front of the world and very vocally being like, "Hey, we're gonna try to be the Dimension 20 or the Critical Role for Star Wars RPG." It's kind of like putting that expectation on ourselves a bit, which but it's also like understand we're not Critical Role. I'm not Matt Mercer, but like we're gonna try our hardest to at least like production wise put on a show that it's a real tabletop RPG stuff. Like we don't have the players don't know the main story or what's going to happen. I don't know the whole main story what's going to happen yet because it depends on the players and plan it week to week with a general idea of overarching structure of kind of some details of how it's going to work. But yeah, it's also trying to focus on like studying, okay, well, what makes Critical Role so good and what makes Dimension 20 so good and what makes like other, and I don't want to knock on any other Star Wars actual plays, but I've kind of like looked at a couple on YouTube and they've never really been able to grip me. And I was trying to like figure out the difference of like what makes Critical Role in Dimension 20 different than random Joe Schmo's actual play on YouTube. And what I realized was that at least with Critical Role, the focus is on the players and the GM as far as like the camera and webcams and stuff or whatever they use. You're not looking at necessarily their dice rolls. You're not looking at their character sheets. You're not looking at all that stuff, like the focus is on the players and like the players, their facial. You can see their facial expressions with how they interact with each other, and really like that's what's interesting. People are watching for the players playing, not for your dice and your sheets and stuff. And I find a lot of people that just do actual plays, either to be whether for fun or not, that are kind of newer into the content sphere. They're playing on either no camera, or if they do have a camera, it's like 720p and really really small. It's like 20% of the screen real estate, and then they have like character sheets blown up to half of the real estate of the screen and stuff. So it's kind of like choosing, like looking at what actual plays are focusing on, and then trying to be like, okay, well, let's focus on the actual players.
Mhm. Well, I think too, and I can say from a personal perspective, a lot of video actual play has been very difficult for me, and yours hasn't been. Part of that being that most of the time I spend consuming that type of content is more or less listening to it while I'm at work. Now, I
Yeah,
may have the video on, my phone may be set somewhere where I can see it, but I'm much more listening to it, and Dark Underworld for me has been very much something that, while I may be listening to it, it doesn't have that uncomfortable dead space that a
yeah,
lot of
that's
the
we edited out. So partially, I think it's two things with even just listening. One is the sound, like sound design and sound production. So we have an editor who cuts out all the dead space between like when I talk and that internet delay of like 2 seconds or whatever, and then on top of the player thinking of what they want to say for 6 seconds, the editor cuts all of that out. So it's very seamless when you're listening to it. Two, it's going to be the oldest rule of content is audio matters more than video. Like somebody can listen to a video with bad video, and it won't be off-putting. But if you can watch a video that has 4K beautiful footage, but if the audio sounds like hoodoo, it's gonna it's gonna immediately like make them want to click off. And then three, I think for me, it's a well-timed sound effect to keep the listener immersed into like the world. Like, oh, like that ship sound of the speeder speeding off. That's like it makes me feel I'm actually like listening to the movie, or like I'm actually there. It helps me picture, like put
Mhm.
myself there. So
Yeah, like I said, like I said, I really enjoy it, and like I enjoy how you make the show. For whatever that means to anyone else, I don't know, because I have been told at times that I have odd tastes, but hey, whatever. Uh, but like I really enjoy like the story. Now I do have a question, and again, I won't don't want to get into spoiler territory, but how much of the farm came from you versus how much was Joe?
how much
Just
of the what?
the farm.
The farm. That was Joe.
Okay.
Well, kind of. So, like, Joe had his backstory was probably the shortest of everybody's. It was about a page, but it pretty much was that, and without trying to spoil anything too much, that he escaped this place. A little bit of details about the person who ran it, but and then he tried to escape with somebody, and they failed, or the other person failed to get out with him, and then he met up with Ragro and stuff. And that's really was like one page. So a lot of the farm was me going back and like adding on to what he kind of laid the foundation for it. I
Mhm.
kind of built the walls and filled them. And there's actually a plot twist in episode 10 that was my wife's idea. So that Joe had no idea about that either. So it was a surprise to Joe with finding out a little bit more about Mott's origins.
Mhm.
So there's a bit of a twist, but
Yeah.
yeah, shout out to my wife. She came up with that idea, and like when we were 2 episodes in, she was like, "What if Mott blank?" And I'm like, "That's a really good idea. Actually, I'm gonna like hold on to that for
See,
eventually down the
I
road."
had flashbacks to the Zillow Beast episode. So,
Oh yeah,
which didn't they call that back in what, Bad Batch or
they
something?
did. Yep.
I remember seeing something about that, and like, oh, that paid off, that kind of like that little scene in the end of that one Clone Wars episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, Star Wars for me, and I will say, Star Wars was my first ever role playing game. I'm old, so it was the old WEG D6, and I think we were playing second edition at that point. But I also came to Star Wars late in life for most people. I mean, I was 18 before I ever saw Star Wars for the first time.
Yeah.
I don't know, there's something about it, it just to me is a very fun universe to play in, regardless of system, although I really like the current system. I think it feels very Star Wars. But like we kind of talked in the opening, you can also go so many directions in how you want the story to go and feel, and it can be so many things.
Yeah.
And I don't know,
I think it's just the universe and a lot of the details for those of us who really, 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 really care about Star Wars, or at least like whether that just be like two movies or the OT or the original, the quote original saga, or all 9 movies or 11 movies, and all the shows and everything. Like there's even if you just like A New Hope, like there's still this just different feeling with the universe that I don't think any other franchise has really fully ever been able to come close to, at least for me, like capturing the feeling of Star Wars, I guess.
yeah,
Um,
well, it's
it's
like,
just I don't know. It's to me it's just special. So
yeah, you're right. I think that's it. I think it probably just hit the right cultural spot and just landed, and
yeah,
there is something about it though. I think, and I've said this, I think the core of Star Wars, and I think this is also why I think this is also why it makes great a great role playing setting is if you look at pretty much all the Star Wars content that's out there, the core of that story is this plucky few against the odds, with the exception of Revenge of the Sith. That is the core theme of pretty much every piece of Star Wars media out there.
yeah.
At least the now official stuff. I never delved much into
I
what
didn't
do they
either.
call it now?
The extended universe
Yeah,
or
that's what they
Legends.
used to
Yeah,
call it,
I
Legends.
never actually I've started the Plagueis book, and that's really the only extended universe thing I've ever really gotten into. So I'm super not well versed, and I was huge in movies and the shows for pretty much
Mhm,
ever, and I'm only like recently kind of started getting into the books.
mhm.
So
But I think that, like I said, the plucky few that is every RPG campaign ever, right?
it is, yeah,
And, to me, especially, I remember the first time I watched Rebels going, "God, this feels like an RPG game."
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this sort of weird mishmash of characters that, well, yeah, there's some sort of convoluted way that they ended up together, but, well, it really doesn't make sense, but here we are, so this is where we're going from.
Bad Batch for me, like the way the episodes are written, and like the stories of the individual episodes to me feel like a lot like a tabletop RPG game.
Mhm.
Especially a bunch of like season 2, there was a bunch of kind of filler episodes. It felt like most of the season felt like filler to me, but even in those filler ones were still fun to watch because it was like, "Oh, man, I could totally see this temple being like a Star Wars RPG thing."
Mhm. Right, and I think the other thing to me that makes it such a great, role-playing setting is the fact that it is so well known, so you describe certain things and everyone knows what you're talking about. Like, I am a fan of weird settings and weird games and whatever, and they're great, but it comes with the added baggage of then having to explain that setting to the table,
Yeah.
where even if you're not a Star Wars nerd, well, pretty much everyone at GamerNationCon, you know, I ran a game and I set it in the mountains of Northern California because I could go, hey, remember the forest from Endor? That's what you're playing in.
Yeah.
And again, knowing that audience, that was like, yeah, this is where you're at. That is the terrain you're in, and so everyone has that image instantly. And you talk about an Ewok or okay, if you say a C5 astromech droid, maybe, like I'm not exactly sure which one a C5 is, although I know that's more like Chopper. But
Yeah.
like I still know Astromech droid with little trash cans on wheels.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we all, even those of us who aren't mega, Star Wars fans, we have that frame of reference. And so I think like, yeah, when someone says this weird race or whatever, I might not know exactly what it is. But when someone says, a Wookiee or, a Moncall or, we have that reference, right? And
Yeah.
I think that also, like, just because it is such a big part of the culture, I think that adds to it just in the terms of like it's referencing a more accessible thing, I guess is a simple way to put it.
Yeah.
So how did you end up getting into role playing? Just because I'm curious at this point.
So my first experience with it was, I think, 10th grade. My best friend and my high school best friend, he got 5e, and we tried like one or two sessions, and we played it super terribly wrong. I tried to play wizard, and I think I cast magic missile and cleared a whole dungeon by casting magic missile like 20 times in a row. Uh, like just played it very, very wrong, and neither of us kind of figured out what we were doing. And I don't think he was super interested in really like trying to figure it out. So we kind of just stopped. But I was always like kind of interested in trying it. Just, it always felt like I just don't really know what it is well enough to really do that. And then so fast forward 3 years to freshman year in university, me and Noah were sitting in his room in our dorm, and we were playing, I think, like Smash on the Wii U or something at the time.
Hmm.
And my buddy Austin, who's one of the original people that was going to be in the actual play that he was the one person that couldn't make it back. He was walking out, and we were like, "Hey Austin, you want to join us for Smash?" And he's like, "No, I can't. I'm about to go play like Star Wars D&D with some friends." And I was like, "You mind if we join?" And I was like, "No, you want to play?" And he's like, "Sure." And so Austin was like, "Yeah, come on." So it was because it was a snow day at our university, and so we had no classes all day. And it ended up being like 3 days of no classes, and we ended up just playing like Star Wars RPG for 3 days straight. And so and it was the narrative dice one. So that was my first real exposure to tabletop role playing games. Played in that campaign it lasted about 3 or 4 months.
Hmm.
It's pretty much until like school let out for the summer. And then the following semester, about 3 or 4 months later, I picked up, I believe, Force and Destiny. No, I picked up either Force and Destiny or Edge of the Empire first. I used the totally legal PDFs online.
What you mean the PDFs that don't exist?
Yeah, to supplement the one I didn't own until I could buy them. I eventually bought them, and now I've bought all three. But tried my hand at GMing. From that point on, I was pretty much the forever GM for the system. I got to play up as a player for the first time since that very first campaign, literally this past September, and I'm still in that campaign with some buddies.
Mhm.
So which is really, really, really fun. But yeah, that's kind of my intro to Star Wars. Kind of got out of it for 2 or 3 years,
Mhm.
and then re-picked it up in 2021. Started running games with some friends, trying to figure out and like learn how to play. Try to find YouTube videos to like figure out how to play and remind myself and stuff. And I came across the Steve is bored videos for how to play, and I kind of wished that like he had more videos like those initial ones explaining how to play. But it seemed like most of his videos were like how to play this specific specialization or something.
Mhm.
And so I was like, whatever. And so kind of figuring it out on my own, reading through the book, trying to figure it out. And then months later, I'd kind of stopped my previous YouTube channel because it wasn't doing well at all. And I was kind of getting burnt out because it wasn't doing well at all. And so I was like, I still want to do YouTube stuff. I just don't know what I want to do. So around that time, again, getting back into Star Wars RPG, wishing these videos existed, but they didn't. And then like months later, like February 2022, was watching Vox Machina with Ashlyn, my wife. And I was like, dude, I wish that like something like this existed for Star Wars RPG. And it was like the light bulb moment came on of like, wait a second. I've been wanting to know what I can do on YouTube. I can do this. Like I can do Star Wars RPG stuff. I can try to be eventually like the new Geek and Sundry or Critical Role for Star Wars. And so that was kind of what the initial idea for the channel kind of came from. And then created all the socials like a month later, posted on socials for like 6 months leading up to the channel launch. So yeah, that's kind of my whole RPG story.
I was just curious, like, because everybody comes to it differently. I mean, like I said, the first game I ever played, I think the campaign ran about, I don't know, 3 or 4 sessions after I joined it, maybe. But then I ended up getting into a Call of Cthulhu game, and
Yeah.
it was in college, right? And at least at my university, I ended up falling in with a group where it was kind of, I guess, compared to a lot of people, somewhat different because we had like the Call of Cthulhu game was sort of like the hub, but then there were different elements of that game that would play other games in like subgroups, but it might have a couple people that didn't play in the Call of Cthulhu game. And, like we played Cyberpunk 2020 at one point, and someone else was running Dark Sun, the old 2E D&D setting. I ended up running Rift. I almost got into I think it was a first or second edition Earth Dawn game at one point through, so my early gaming was very diverse, where it sounds like you've almost you landed in what you really liked and just have followed
Yeah.
that.
And over the years, I've tried other systems and stuff. Like I ran D&D 5e a little bit, and I've played a little bit of 5e, and it never felt as good as the narrative dice system to me.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been a huge fan of the idea of like the DM telling me to roll a d20, and I roll a d20 and I roll like a 16 and it fails, and I don't know what the bar was that I was trying to roll for, or if like the DM changed the number on the fly, or whatever. I feel like it's easier with like D&D to be like, oh, I'm gonna try to chase the bad guy on foot, and then roll like a 19, and the GM be like, ah, you don't catch him. Whereas with like Star Wars, you can roll the dice and it's like, oh, I have one. I can see my difficulty in my hand. I roll it. I rolled 2 success against his athletics with my athletics. So like
Mm-hmm.
I succeeded at what I was trying to do. So there's like really no way around the GM trying to
Mm-hmm.
like really railroad you to like prevent you from advancing faster than he wants you to. Like just that kind of stuff. Noah is super super into the Powered by the Apocalypse
Mm-hmm.
games. Especially like he was big in the Dungeon World for a few years, and he GM'd probably 3 or 4 mini campaigns for that. And I played in all of them, and it really just is not for me at
Mm-hmm.
all. It's a little too bare bones with like it feels like it's for me so abstract that it becomes hard to use again.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's trying to be rules light to allow for easier time to role play and easier time to play, but it's the way it implements things. Again, it's like it's just so abstract that it makes it harder to figure out what I can actually do.
So
Um,
I think, and most of my experience with Powered by the Apocalypse has been Monster of the Week, but I feel like Powered by the Apocalypse is very good at a very narrow thing, and how the game is set up defines what that narrow thing is. I don't know Dungeon World in particular,
it's pretty much like a D&D variant of Powered by the Apocalypse.
see, I no personal experience here, but to me that sounds like it's not tightly enough focused
Mhm.
for Powered by the Apocalypse to do what it does well.
Yeah.
Like Monster of the Week will do a lot of different things, but at its core, it's still Monster of the Week. It's not
Yeah.
sword high fantasy, whatever, which is really, really broad. See, to me, narrative dice, and I actually found narrative dice actually in a lot of ways through the Eberron Renewed podcast.
Mm.
I had gotten really interested in Eberron as a setting, and they're part of the D20 network, and they would talk about other podcasts, and they ended up GM Chris ran an adventure for them in Star Wars to show them the narrative dice. And that was like, I had gotten curious about it because, hearing about it on different podcasts, I'm like, okay, that was where I kind of got it. And I think for me, and I'd be curious to hear your take on this because you obviously come at it from a completely different perspective. To me, as a player, and what I tell people to do if I'm GMing using narrative dice is more, don't think of it like you said. You want to chase the guy, so I'm going to make an athletics check. Just say what you want to do, and we'll figure out what to roll and how to roll it.
Right.
Think action first, not check
Skill
first.
check first. Yeah.
And I think I tell people in a sense, almost think the game backwards.
Yeah. And the hardest thing for me personally, because I've been a huge video game person since I was 5 in my grandmother's basement on the SNES. So like for me coming into tabletop RPGs, the first 5 years of the 10 years now I've been doing it, I kind of approached being a PC from like a video gamer perspective. And so coming at it from like looking at my skills and kind of like meta making my characters like strong and whatnot. And I really just did not enjoy being a player, which is why I kind of GM'd whenever I could for
Mhm,
that reason. But it was kind of around like 2019, 2020. There's actually the channel How to Be a Great GM with
mhm,
Guy Schlanders. His channel really kind of opened my eyes for like what it's supposed to be, and it drastically changed the way I GM'd and made me enjoy it even more. It made me drastically change the way I viewed being a player character and enjoyed being a player character way more than I did before. But yeah, I would agree. And I've said it on my channel a couple times too that like one of my biggest tips for new players is like don't ask to roll stealth, don't ask to roll athletics, don't ask to roll skill. Like tell me what you want to do. I will tell you what skill that requires and what role you can do. I might even tell you two skills that you can do. Like, oh, you want to hotwire a car? Okay, well that's going to either be an average or an average mechanics or a hard skullduggery check or
mhm.
something. So it's I definitely agree that yeah, just tell me what you want to do.
Well, and like one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard on this was an interview with Jim Davies from WebDM, and he said what he likes to tell people to do is play the world, not your character sheet.
Yeah.
And I think like for me, I played some video games, but my video game stuff has always been much more like racing and sports games as
Yeah.
opposed to I mean like I played some of the Final Fantasies and whatever, and I played World of Warcraft for a while. But like, and I say this all the time, on the podcast, whatever, I get a completely different fix, if you want to call it that, from tabletop RPGs than I do from a video game. Because at its core, any sort of video game, there is a mechanic to be exploited. And there is a quote unquote win state,
Yeah.
whether it means you beat the raid or you whatever. Tabletop RPGs don't need to be that.
Yeah, it's just telling a
Tabletop
story.
RPGs are the weird thing.
Yeah.
Do the things that the coder didn't expect. You know what I mean? Because you can.
Yeah.
You I don't know how else to better say it, but like the fact that you're sitting there playing either actually in person or virtual with other people and this is a malleable story like you said, in Dark Underworld, that it has gone different directions because of what the players did. And
Yeah.
then, I know this happens to me as a GM. I do something intending to push them in one direction and they go somewhere else, you
Yeah.
know.
And there's sometimes as a GM, like there are ways to kind of rein them back a little bit into what you were planning to, and without like making their choices obsolete or stuff, like figure out like how you plan and like reweaving it back into the story in certain ways. It's definitely but it's also a fine balance. There's been times where as a GM, like you could pull the reins a little too hard, and then it feels like it's not smooth for the player's experience either. It feels like their agency kind of gets taken away a bit too. So it's like finding that right balance of like as a GM, you have a bigger story kind of in mind a lot of the time, and so trying to get them like somewhat to that end path and let them decide which path leads there. But sometimes getting them to there you pull a little too hard.
Well,
So
as someone was Brett's fond of saying, the quantum ogre theory. There's an ogre in the end of whatever tunnel it is you go down.
yeah,
There's only
yep,
one ogre, but it's where you decided to go.
yeah.
But no, I think that's a thing. Yeah. And now you mentioned that I haven't watched too much of your instructional videos on your channel. I have watched a few, like the two interviews you've done with Sam Stewart, some of that stuff. What do you do with your instructional stuff? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so I actually started the channel with what I call the Beginner's Guide series. And it was like 17 videos going through every chapter of like the mechanical rules of the game. And so, like, video one was just what is Star Wars RPG, explaining the three different rule books and what the system is. Video two was like the dice. Video three was Destiny tokens. Videos four, five, and six were character creation. And we had like one for gear and equipment, one for like the economy in the game, one for enemies and adversaries, one for healing, one for combat. Like, but we went like start to finish through the book. And so launched the channel on the first 5 videos on day one. Just put all 5 up because I figured if I could get the way YouTube works is like you watch all the way through a video, you're gonna see that channel appear in your homepage. If you watch 5 videos back to back, you're gonna see me on your homepage for some time. And so that was kind of the idea for the channel first started, but took me about 6 to 7 months to finish that beginner's guide series, kind of going through and explaining all the rules and stuff. And since then I have been doing like a bunch of other videos. So like I did one on like how to prevent GM burnout that was based on a workshop that I ran for the Star Wars RPG community Discord.
Mhm.
I did videos on like 10 tips to be a better or 10 tips for like GMing Star Wars, or like explaining what is tabletop role playing for like somebody who's completely new to it and doesn't understand the lingo and like what it is and stuff. Some videos on like specific chapters of the book, like the Galaxy chapter, and like kind of explaining that. Guides on how to, like, an overview for like trouble brewing the adventure, just like that kind of stuff, like review and unboxing different books and like beginner's game boxes and stuff and all that fun stuff. Recently started a Genesis RPG beginner's guide. I'm only got 2 videos out, and I have a couple more scripted that I actually film and edit and record. Planning on redoing the beginner's guide series for Star Wars, just to 2.5 years of experience now that I can kind of improve and on the formula a bit. But yeah,
Well,
just that kind of stuff.
you
So.
learn stuff every time too.
Oh yeah.
Like every time you play, and I will say, and I've talked to a number of people. The other thing about this is that the narrative dice system for me, and from my experience, a number of other people, is pretty confusing to read. Like you
Yeah.
read the book and you're like, okay, the first time I ever got to play it, it was like, oh, that's it. Like
Yeah.
and yet it works exactly like they said it does, but in practice is so much easier to grasp than reading in the abstract.
Yeah. And funny enough, when I started the channel, it wasn't a Star Wars RPG expert by any means. I was just reading the book and creating a script based on the rules in front of me, and also kind of learning myself on the fly as well for a lot of the stuff. There's some stuff in the beginner's guide that's actually like wrong, that like in the next video I had to be like, hey guys, because like somebody would comment and be like, no, it actually works this way. And so I would be like, hey guys, I know I said this last video, but like, for example, one of the examples in the character creation video for XP, I always thought, and how it was initially explained to me, was that it was 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 for skills. If it's a career skill, it's halved. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. But no, it's actually 5, 10, 20, 25, whatever, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And if it's not a career skill, it's only 5 XP more. So like stuff like that was like, it was wrong in the videos. I had to go back and make a correction. So part of the reason why I want to also redo the series is to remove some of those flaws, imperfections, things I got wrong. And now, like, pretty much eating, breathing, sleeping Star Wars RPG for 2 years, I do feel like I'm maybe a little bit more well versed in the rules and stuff. But
Well,
um,
that's what the way things happen, right? Like I know I've been in spots where I ran games a certain way, and then randomly thumbing through the rule book one day, I find this, oh no, that doesn't work at all the way we've been doing it.
yeah,
And I think the fun thing about that is it's not quote unquote wrong to play it that way. Like I actually, in the circumstance I'm thinking of, I was running something completely not the way the book said you were supposed to do it.
yeah,
So the next session, I bring it to my players and say, hey, this thing that we've been playing this way for 6 months. And I read them the section of the book about how you're supposed to do it. And I said, so do y'all want to do it the way the book says it, the way that we have been? And everyone was like, no, we'll just do it the way we have been. It's more fun.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's the other thing. Like when you get into a video game, be it, like I said, I was a raid tank in WoW for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and look, there's a way you do things to, in my case, I had to generate threat or soak damage, and there were things you needed to do, ways you needed to build your spec, whatever.
Yeah.
An RPG doesn't need to be like that. It's about this fun interactive story and the scenes you create together. And sometimes the fun is the stuff that goes sideways.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So like and yet also I completely understand, as a creator, like, oh my God, I got this wrong. Everyone, well, yes, but I think there's value in maybe being able to, like you've said now, yeah, okay, I got it wrong, but I've learned, and maybe you found a different way to play it. Like I'm sure if Jay Little runs Star Wars, he doesn't get everything completely rules as written, even though he wrote them or most
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
But that's the one thing too, and I know listening to like a lot of the old Order 66 episodes with interviews with Jay and Sam and a lot of the other people that worked on the books, they're so passionate about Star Wars. And I feel like so much of that seeped into the mechanics and the feel of the game. And
Yeah.
I think that maybe is I think why it connects too, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know when we interviewed Jay, he was telling us the story that the distribution of the symbols on the Force die is directly inspired by Luke asking Yoda, "Well, is the dark side stronger?" And Yoda responding, and I'm paraphrasing,
Yeah.
stronger, no, but easier, yes.
Yeah.
And that's why.
There's one extra side. There's on the 12-sided dice, there's 7 that are dark side and 5 that are light side, but there's the equal amount of pips
Right.
for both. Yeah.
Yeah. So
If you land light side, you're more likely to get a double if it's light.
that was why are an equal number of pips, but more faces with dark side.
Yep.
And just to me, like that's that's saying, like, look, these people were deep into this when they made it, and I think that's why it just feels Star Wars.
It does, yeah. And a lot of people are now saying that they want the license to move to somebody new, and I'm like, I really don't. Like, I love the narrative dice. I want them to continue making this system thrive. I want this system to thrive again. So I'm hoping with these current reprint effort that they're trying to do that it can kind of bring the Star Wars system a little bit back into mainstream a little bit.
So, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts in this area, and the way the line has been handled since the sale of Fantasy Flight Games. It, look, I
It has
know
been great.
Sam is still theoretically the head person at Edge.
I think he's doing the best with the hand that he's been given.
Yes, but like it has been. Look, I've said it, and I'll say it here. If you were to write a treatise on how to kill a system, it
Yeah.
could say, "See the Edge FFG Edge transfer."
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, and part of it again, part of it really isn't their at least at the beginning, part of it wasn't their fault because it's like they initially transferred and then COVID hit and then there was no production for a year and then they had to get everything back and they're still playing catch up from that,
well, that's
but
the
it's
thing
still
too.
just yeah, it's so unfortunate.
And then you add in the layers of what they have to deal with licensing with Lucasfilm, and like I don't mean it's hard for me. Like I don't want to say I'm angry about it, but there's part of me that's like disappointed in things. But at the same point, it's like I swear it's not that anyone wants to kill it. I understand from a financial standpoint, from a management standpoint, why someone would say, "Oh, it's time for a new edition or a new system." I think the cool thing about that in the context of an RPG is, though, there will be the community that loves this system that keeps it alive.
Yeah.
Look at how many other games, like, good heavens, there's a system, a website out there dedicated to keeping the old TSR Marvel phase rip system alive.
Yeah.
I think there are going to be people that keep this engine alive, whether it's supported or not. And I think it's fortunate for us that we now live in an era with 3D printing and all the things so that, hey, people can make the dice even. I mean, there's the copyright issues around the symbols and this and that, and I
Yeah.
understand all that. I don't want to say, right, don't respect intellectual property law and all that. At the same point, if you're doing it for personal use, it's not really illegal.
Yeah. Yeah, and I kind of view it the same way, and honestly, like, the only thing that is copyrightable is the symbols. So
Hmm.
even if you, like, you recreate the dice and just make your own symbols for success, failure, advantage, threat, triumph, despair, like, you can't copyright a game mechanic. That's why the Genesis is able to exist, is because they literally copied the system and just changed the symbols around, and voila, it's their own IP and their own
Hmm.
game now that they own.
Yeah, it's but like I yeah, I've heard a lot of the talk like you said, and I'm with you. I want to see it come back. I don't really want to see the narrative dice system go away though. I think it
Yeah.
works right for the setting.
They have to do I think it's definitely an uphill battle for Edge if they wanna bring the system back. They have to regain a lot of people's trust, and it really, like, I think the most ideal thing they could do to, like, fix the system, to bring it back would be, 1, to make it way easier to get a hold of the 50 whatever books they have for what they currently have, just make it available for purchase, and then the second thing would be start pumping out, like, make a new edition and then make content for that, to get people excited for something new that you can do. Because really, like, they've made, I feel like, everything you can make with Star Wars RPG, like, in its current form. I don't really know. I tried to make a video. I had a video concept for, like, my predictions for the book they announced in 2023, and I came up with, like, I could only think of three potential things it could be, which was like either it's a second edition, or it's an Old Republic book, or it's a New Republic book. Like, everything else has been covered so far, like, unless they wanna invent new careers entirely. So it's just like they've really, I feel like they've exhausted everything they can do with Star Wars RPG at the moment, as far as new content, unless they decide to break into a new edition so that way they can restart the cycle, which I think that's what the system really needs, but we'll see what they do.
Yeah. I mean, we don't get to control that. I feel like yeah, I actually agree with you. I mean, other than okay, you'll get people say, "Oh, we want a Mandalorian book." Well, it's fine, but what do you really need it for? It's all fluff. You already have all the important stuff.
Yeah, like, I never get that either. Like, what is in a Mandalorian book that you guys want, that you people want so much? Like, it's
I
just Edge
mean,
of the Empire. Like, what?
what like, "Oh, well, there's no stats for this or that," or
Then make it up.
make
Like,
it up. Be honest. Go through most of them are really damn close to being reskins of something else anyway. And
yeah,
those of us who GM do that all the time anyhow.
it's not hard to say that, like, yeah, Beskar armor is stupid expensive, but it has, like, let's say 5 soak. I don't know. Like, it's like, you can, yeah, I don't know. I agree with you. I don't understand the need or the want for a Mandalorian book.
Well, like I'm just, pulling that out because heard a lot of talk about that. But
I have to. Yeah.
eh, or I mean, Bad Batch. I mean, look, if you've got what is it, Collapse of the Republic, Rise of the Separatists, and what was the third one in that era?
It was
There,
just 2.
was it just two? But
It
those
was just
books
2.
combined with some Edge and maybe a little bit of
Force and
or Dawn of
Destiny.
Rebellion is the other one I'm thinking of.
Age Rebellion.
Yeah, or Age. I don't know. I think I've got
Yeah.
the books here somewhere, but I don't have them
The
like
Rebels book
coherent.
and the Force and Destiny book, like, that can get you, and the Clone Wars books, that'll get you there.
Yeah, you can get to wherever you need with what they have out, and I think that also puts them in a weird spot from as a publisher, company trying to make money. Like, well, where do we go?
And that's really where, for me, the issue is, like, it's not Edge's fault. Like, if you're gonna be mad at somebody, be mad at Asmodee. Like,
Oh, yeah.
they don't have the systems in place to, like, to, one, like, store books. They can actually have stock, so they can actually sell these books and don't have to go through
Hmm.
third party distributors that run out of stock immediately. Like, Asmodee, why don't you just build a freaking website that, like, doesn't say out of stock? Instead, it says add to cart, and then you just can see, or even, like, pre-order, like,
Hmm.
get pre-order interests.
Yeah. I mean, something I would like to see would be like, they did like gadgets and gear and in some of those books. I would like to see some sort of like species compendium.
That would be nice too. Though it's like the wiki exists. So
Well, but I'm saying even just like, okay, even if you own all the books and all the species, just a book that is just here are
here
the
are all the
core
species.
stats for the
Yeah.
species as
Yeah.
player characters. Just that. Don't want careers, don't need careers. We have the career books
Yeah.
just so that, oh wait, I want to play a Thorian. Here's the species book. Look it up.
Yeah. I think that would be super, super helpful. My only hesitancy, and like, I've kind of thought about it too, like the only reason why I personally wouldn't find that incredibly helpful is that you open up the species section once pretty much when you create your character, and you don't open it up again for months until you create a new character. So for like the whole of 5 seconds that you need to look at it, like a wiki page really does kind of
I mean,
simplify the
fair.
process a bit. But like I understand people wanting to have I can understand the one desire to have a book that has all the species right there for you to easily find.
But yeah, that's wish
Yeah.
lists. So, all right, what else would you like to tell people about Tabletop Empire or anything else?
Um, yeah, I'm trying to be best place to go for narrative dice Star Wars RPG content, whether it's educational content or entertainment content. Yeah, just kind of want to be like if somebody wants content for the system, I want to be the channel to go to for it. And I think after 3 years, well, I'm like 3 years in and I'm still the only channel actively doing it, so that helps. But yeah, I mean, check out Dark Underworld if you haven't so far. People are telling us that they really love it, so I assume that means it's really good. But I'll let you guys be the judge of that. We are definitely enjoying playing it and are very invested in the story ourselves from a GM and player's perspective. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much it for for my YouTube channel.
So you guys, I'm obviously the YouTube channel Tabletop Empire. Do you have a website? Anything else?
Yeah, the tabletopempire.com. We also have like a merch store there. So if you guys do listen to the actual play and are really enjoying it, we have some really cool merch related to it at the moment. That's really like the main purpose of the website at the moment. So,
Mhm.
uh,
I know on your Discord you had some limited edition like art.
yeah, we currently have limited edition metal posters. So I think we only ever had 10 for sale. And so we've sold a handful. So only a handful left. But they look really nice. I have the 11th one, which was like a test to make sure that they look good. And then I was like, okay, cool, 10 more. So but yeah, that's what we got going on. New episodes for Dark Underworld every Tuesday night. Unless for whatever reason, like we have a player that's sick and have to take a week off, or between it's not seasons of the show, but like there was an act one, which was the first 10 episodes, and then we took was intended to be a 3 week break, it ended up being a 6 week break due to a bunch of life stuff with multiple players. And so we'll probably be pretty much going weekly for act two, and then we'll probably take another short break and leading in before we get into act three eventually. So, but yeah, we're live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. And then with the new episodes, we're also live for an hour before that, like live streaming me and the cast members with the Lightspeed Lounge, which is our time just to hang out with people, chat about the previous episode, chat about what's new with Star Wars RPG and Star Wars and all the fun stuff.
Mhm.
So occasionally, you get some improv in character, so which of
So
people
now,
seem to like.
just I have only watched the what do you want to say, the edited videos. You also stream your recordings,
So
or am I
we
misunderstanding
at
you?
8 p.m. Tuesdays we premiere the video, so
Okay.
people can watch the edited video with like a live chat, and they can chat with other people that are watching it live during its premiere.
Okay.
We have the unedited versions available to watch on Patreon.
Okay.
So if you are somebody who likes an unedited experience, then our Patreon page is the place to go for that. But
Okay. Very cool.
yeah.
All right. Well, I think with all that, you want to play some game of the week?
Game of the week. Game of the week.
All right. Would you like to go first, or would you like me to?
I'll let you go first, so that gives me an idea of what to think about.
All right. So I'll drop a link up in the green room just so you can look at things. So I'm going to suggest something as a game of the week that I actually, well, sort of have gotten to play.
You stole one of my. That was going to be one of my things I was thinking about actually.
Well, that actually puts this into rarefied. I mentioned this like a year ago because
You should
not
probably say what it is. I think I cut you off. You didn't
no,
actually
no,
say
no, it's
what.
okay. But our audience is used to me rambling on incoherently. It's fine. Um, this is Daggerheart from Darrington
Yeah,
Press,
it
which is
looks
Critical
good.
Role. I got to play the beta at last year's GamerNationCon, and mechanically, it's really interesting. Like it's. I don't know of anything to compare it to.
Noah sent me, or one of our players, he sent me a video of like the mechanical overview for
Mhm.
Daggerheart like 2 days ago, and to me, it looks like it's an in between of 5e and the narrative dice system.
It kind of that's a good way to
It
say it.
really it has those elements from the narrative dice system make that really attract me to wanting to try this system a lot.
I played it. I will say that the beta, the setting would not be necessarily my cup of tea,
Mhm.
but mechanically, I really liked the way like you have uh, hope and fear that you generate with every dice roll, and it creates this kind of ebb and flow. There are mechanics that encourage cooperative storytelling.
Mhm.
The initiative, as I recall, I don't remember if it was directly tied to hope and fear, but essentially the the way that the combated initiative works, it very much has a really neat ebb and flow based on the dice. Like you can't necessarily set it up, but it was a really, really cool feel. I do remember, the character options and stuff seemed really cool. Obviously now the full version's out. The PDF I think currently will set you back $30, but it's a 400-page plus book. The artwork looks gorgeous as you would expect, right? From Critical Role / Darrington. What's it say? 9 domains, 9 classes, 18 ancestries, communities, all sorts of abilities. I mean, you can play a frog person for crying out loud.
Yeah.
But it was playing it was a really, really neat experience. Just like I said, for me, I really enjoyed the mechanics and how it made the game feel.
Who brought it?
Paulie ran it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
How did he have a copy of the beta?
So this was, I guess, when they were in open beta.
Oh,
He had printed it out, and it literally happened to be just I had an open spot in my schedule, and I turned around, and there was a sign on the table looking for players. I'm like, "So what are you doing?"
yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, okay." And yeah, it like I said, I really enjoyed it, and like I said, I found it, and I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but the mechanics, like you said, it kind of has almost a much more narrative feel than like a 5e. Like the mechanics encourage narrative, maybe not to the extent that the narrative dice system does, but it's not just your average roll to succeed. Okay, I hit it.
Yeah.
you know,
It definitely has me excited to try it. So
So yeah. So my game of the week is Daggerheart.
stole my that was honestly like when you were talking about the game of the week, I was thinking like, I'm thinking Daggerheart, but
Well,
I was gonna think about it. Like it's really weird right now. I'm kind of in a video game slump where really like the game that's exciting me right now is my Star Wars game that I'm a player in for the first time in 8 years. Video game wise, like I'm excited for is not out yet. So does that count?
I mean
It's
it
not.
can, sure.
Sure. Okay. I guess. So Kirby Air Riders is currently the game that is most exciting me on the Switch. It's coming for the Switch 2, supposedly this year. So I guess maybe I'll say the first Kirby Air Ride on the GameCube if I had to choose a current game.
Okay.
Super nostalgic game for me. It was one of my favorites as a kid. A sequel or remake or port or anything has been my. It's never going to happen, but it's still at the top of my Nintendo wish list. And I grew up on Nintendo, so I'm a huge Nintendo fanboy. And so it was like it's never gonna happen. Like it never did perform well. It didn't sell well. They're never gonna make another one. And then with the Switch 2 Direct, they announced Kirby Air Riders, and nearly cried. I was actually on the plane on the way to GamerNationCon when they
Oh,
announced when I was watching that direct. So yeah, that's probably like I guess yeah, Kirby Air Ride probably my game of the week, and Kirby Air Riders super excited for. The only
well,
reason
that's
I
cool.
pre-ordered a Switch 2 was for that game. So
I won't tell you what the most current game platform system I own is, because you'll laugh.
I'm gonna be 30 in a year and a half, and this is the very first console I've ever bought on launch. I was like 8 months late, 8 or 9 months late to the Switch One. I was like 2 or 3 years late to the newest Xbox, a year or two late to the PlayStation, and most of those I got when we didn't have rent for 2 years. So now that we have a mortgage, money is a little tighter, but
I bought my PS, ironically, like a week or two, like a month before the DualShock platform dropped in price.
oh yeah,
So that dates it a little bit. The yeah, my original PlayStation. I bought. I think I have a first gen PS2 that's actually hooked up upstairs right now. That I bought used, and I've had for 18 years now. It still works. But
yeah.
the most current system I own is actually a Wii.
Oh okay, yeah,
It's just not my thing. Like, I mean, I enjoy video games, but as much as there are things I would love to play, I keep going, you haven't turned on the platform system you have in 3 months. Why do you
yeah.
want to go spend $500?
And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with most of our cons with our PlayStation and Xbox. Like, I don't think I'll ever get another one. Really, like my wife's more of a single player gamer, so she kind of likes the maybe having one. But I'm more of a PC gamer at heart.
Mhm,
Um, and Nintendo, so like a Switch for like when I'm
mhm,
on the go is really nice. So, but I've been kind of in a video game slump, so I haven't really been playing all that many video games recently.
mhm.
Um, been busy with 2 children, wife, day job that's 40 hours a week, YouTube channel, guitar lessons as well as a side income. So it's I'm I'm busy. So,
I hear that. I hear that. I have
yeah,
a more than 40-hour a week job, plus the podcast, plus trying to game, plus trying
yeah.
to practice guitar, and oh my gosh. Any other number of projects I'd love to be in the middle of that I
Oh,
haven't got there.
I one thing I kinda want to talk about is you're also a big metalhead.
A bit, yes.
Yeah.
I know from
Yeah.
your Discord profile you're a metalhead. What
Yes.
particular genre is your thing?
I'm kinda lean more into the prog metal sphere a little
Okay.
bit, as well as, like, melodic metalcore.
Okay.
So my intro into metal was like Killswitch Engage. It was huge in the Dream Theater for like 10 years, 11
Mhm,
years. And they're still one of my favorite bands, but the past 3 or 4 years, I've been really into a band called Periphery,
mhm,
which they're like progressive metalcore.
mhm.
Um,
I know of them. I'm more thrash is kind
yeah,
of my
thrash.
like, Testament, Overkill,
Yeah.
up through Black Album, Metallica.
Yeah. I saw Testament actually with Lamb of God, Killswitch, and Huntress in like 2012.
Mhm.
They put on a good show.
Steve
Yeah.
DiGiorgio is an absolute animal on the bass.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Just I'm sorry, anyone who plays that fast with his fingers and half the time on stage plays fretless.
Yeah. Yeah, nuts. Like, for me, like, I enjoy them. I'm as a guitar player and a musician myself, I kinda come to music from that perspective, so most of what I listen to kinda has that some sort of, like, higher technical level of
Mm.
playing and stuff, which is why, like, the prog fear kinda
Oh,
grabs me, but I'm also not as big of a prog head as, like, a bunch of other prog metal heads are, because I don't want, like, the wankery for the sake of it being all over the place. I want it has to still, like, flow and groove and stuff, but I want it
yeah.
can be interesting still, you know?
Well, but see, like, I've said it to me, it's like, if you listen to and I'm just kind of pulling names, I'm more familiar with, like, some of Petrucci's solo stuff,
Yeah,
but you listen to his solo stuff versus, we'll say, Buckethead or maybe Yngwie Malmsteen. Those 2 guys are amazing technical players, but Joe's stuff or not Joe, John's stuff is
John.
still songs. Like,
Yeah.
there's I don't know. It
There's a for me, there's a different level, like, sure, Ingve is good, and sure, Buckethead's good, but, like, there's a huge difference to me between like Joe Satriani, John Petrucci, Paul Gilbert, Steve Vai, and your Bucketheads and Yngwies, where it's just like they're just shredding for the sake of shredding, like or whatever. Like, or maybe Yngwie is more of a shredder, but where you actually like you crafting a song, and you can still shred in the song, but
Oh yeah, like
yeah, but it's the real
it's not
song,
technique for the sake of technique. It's
right?
which by the
To
way,
me,
if
that's
you want
animals
some,
as leaders that it's super fun to watch live, but they're just their technique for the sake of technique. Like it's not fun to listen
yeah,
to
I
just in the
can't
car.
really get into like I respect what I'm drawing a blank Tosin does,
Yeah.
but like I yeah, it's not my thing, you know, like
Tosin and Pliny just put out a song together with Neural DSP. I recommend checking it out. It's actually really, really good. It came out like a week ago.
okay.
So if you like the instrumental guitar stuff,
So you want a
it rips. It's pretty good.
really fun list. Have you seen the Drumeo video where they had Mike Portnoy play
Yes.
Taylor Swift?
Yes, I did. I hate Taylor Swift, but yes.
That was hysterical, and yet
Yeah.
he just nails it.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yep. I did see that.
Alright, well, let me sign out here real quick, and we can keep bullshitting if we want to. Um, so, go check out Tabletop Empire, tabletopempire.com. We'll put links to all that in the show notes for anyone who wants to find it. Actually, we are now on YouTube as well, although it's really just the RSS of the audio, so there is no video yet anyway. I haven't learned how to do that part, so it doesn't exist yet. That being said, come on our Discord. You can, interact with us, talk, ask questions. We have a pretty good community that'll, talk gaming or just kind of whatever you want. So yeah, come check that out. We also have a Patreon if you're so inclined. But anyway, with all that being said, just want to thank everyone for listening. Thank you, Nate, for taking the time to come.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And remind everyone to be kind to each other and get out there and play some RPGs.
Intro and outro music by the band 12 Noon. You can email us at meandsteverpg@gmail.com. You can find us on Twitter and RPGs. Find us on Facebook at Me and Steve RPG Podcast, on Discord at Me and Steve RPGs, and as always, all of these links are in the show notes. Thank you, and be kind to one another.
How much for the cigar?
Cigar, $20, dog. You gotta go down the street to the store and buy that.